Hello, human peoples. You're listening to the podcast network of Gamefully Unemployed. To support us and gain access to great exclusive podcasts like Fox Mulder is a Maniac, Tom and Jeff Watch Batman, Star Trek The Next Futurama, and our latest show, Spiel Boys, head over to patreon.com/gamefullyunemployed. We do game streaming, movie nights with our patrons every Friday night, and you can even commission your own podcast about anything you want. Literally anything, within reason, and we have to do it. You are quite frankly out of excuses not to go visit patreon.com/gamefullyunemployed. That's patreon.com/GAMEFULLY unemployed, which is spelled like it sounds.
More shapes.
Shapes and sizes.
It's another shape one. Hey, everybody.
Hello, everyone.
My name is David Bell.
My name is Tom Ryman.
And we just watched Circle.
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 Yeah, it's a circle.
Sure,
folks.
that can be it. I don't...
Yeah. that is it.
What the hell's going on?
They're killing us.
No, it's not them. Are you guys seeing this? Look at your hands. When you move them, it changes the floor.
It's a vote. They're killing whoever gets the most votes.
It's us. We're choosing who dies.
Listen, this was a 2015 film. It's on the Netflix. I have been aware of this film for a while. I was always curious about it, but I also didn't really want to watch it. This is from our beloved Burrito Mouth, first of all, who has been giving us... Thank you, Burrito Mouth, who's been continuously giving us shape films. And the beauty of that is I know that Burrito Mouth probably hasn't seen this film. Like, they very frequently have messaged me and been like, oh, I guess I'll watch that film now. Because they're just giving us shape films. So this is much like when this started with Cube. This is a Cube-like film. This is group of people.
Yeah, right off the bat, it sounds like it's going to be a Cube ripoff.
Yes. This is, it's got the, I'm going to call it the stink of, which isn't saying anything about the quality of this film, but it's got that scent of like, we didn't want to pay much money. Like your Paranormal Activities, your Cubes, where it's like, we're going to take a high concept idea that conveniently is very low budget, right?
Yes.
Because the entire film is a group of people who are standing in a circle.
Yes.
And every 2 minutes, somebody dies.
Mm-hmm.
They're zapped by this orb. It's not a mystery box. They mention aliens at the top of it.
Pretty early. Yeah. Yeah. There's not really... It's like a reveal for us, but not for the people in the room, really.
Yeah. And so the one missing element is that everybody in the circle can anonymously vote for the next person to die. So it's everybody is voting for who should we kill every 2 minutes. That's the premise of the film. Tom, how did you like Circle?
It was a lot better than I was expecting.
Same.
I was expecting a pretty flimsy Cube knockoff.
Yeah, this is a big ask in the sense that we as a society are very used to these types of films, I think. Mm-hmm. And so when you see this premise on Netflix, you go, oh, Christ, there's another one.
Exactly. You would scroll right by it. It's a micro budget film, even though it has it has Julie Benz in it, and she's been in stuff.
That's cool, yeah.
Yeah, so it's like, oh, weird. But I mean, it looks like it was made for maybe $2 million.
Yeah, absolutely. The effects, at the one scene with, like, that's not in the circle area, the effects are rough.
They're pretty, it's like early...
It's sci-fi original series.
I was going to say, it's cable TV CGI, which is fine. Yeah. Like, it does its job, but you can just tell that they don't have a whole lot of money.
Right. Yeah, and so this is where I landed on this. Is this movie isn't amazing, but it is way better than it had any business being.
Yeah, it's not incredible, but I think it's kind of good. Like, it's definitely a lot better than I expected, and it's just under 90 minutes. It really only takes place in a single room, so it's just a bunch of characters in a room talking. And every 2 minutes, somebody will get zapped by a bolt of electricity. But it's like it held my attention. Like I was captivated the entire time.
That was the same thing.
Yeah.
The same thing happened as I was watching it, taking notes, and Hannah was doing work, and then for the last half hour, she just sat down and we were just quietly watching it.
Yeah.
And it's almost like reality TV where you're like, shit, now I'm invested in this.
Yeah.
Because the movie does what I think very smart moves.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to, kind of go through them. Is that like one of the first things the movie does is the thing you expect the movie to do, which is one character comes out and is like, starts being an asshole, right? Like starts being the villain, where it's like, oh, how should we need to start voting on people. Starts like Lord of the Flies-ing it.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
And you're like, oh, here we go. That character is almost immediately killed.
Yeah.
And that is the premise that the promise of this film that was very surprising and realistic is that, so again, you're in a circle of people. There's like what, 20 of them?
No, 50.
50. Wow. And
40 or
every
50,
2 minutes,
I think. Yeah.
Yeah. Every 2 minutes, everybody votes on who gets killed. What that means is that no one can be that jerk. Like the moment someone's an asshole, guess what? The moment someone starts pitting people against each other, guess what? Like it's a popularity contest. And part of that means that you can't be a villain. You can't, like, a lot of these films I feel like have that, right? Where someone snaps and they start like terrorizing other people. Mm-hmm. And without immediately getting to the reveal, the ending of the film, that is sort of the theme, right? Is like, in order to survive, you can't be an overt prick. It's a battle of manipulation.
It's like Werewolf. It's like a hidden identity game. But they do another trope even before that one where they have the asshole immediately, is there's a character who seems like they're going to take charge and know what's going on, and he gets killed like instantly.
Right.
Like, within 2 rotations. Then we have the asshole gets killed. What I thought, the thing that was the most interesting thing about this movie and what held my attention for so long and what I think it does really well is that it's basically, you mentioned Lord of the Flies, and it's a lot like that. It's like a study in how people create groups of others.
Yes. Yeah, one of the things that happens that was cold and was really smart is for like the first quarter, maybe even longer, I don't remember, there's just a quiet Middle Eastern lady and she doesn't say a fucking word, and then she's just boom, killed. And it's like, oh, you fucking racist. Yeah. Like they just target, like it's stuff like that where they reveal stuff like racism and homophobia and how it's done in it. And again, it does this very smart thing where like there's a cop character who hilariously reaches for his gun that's not there when he first wakes up.
Yeah.
It's like, what are you going to do?
Worth a shot.
And yeah. And the cop survives for a while, and then he is overtly racist.
Yeah.
And guess what? He's gone. But there are people who are subtly racist.
Very subtly racist, yeah.
Yeah, and they stay for a while. It's that idea is like a character becomes like very homophobic, and they bam, dead. So it's like it's not like I'm 14 and this is deep. It's not like someone's first thought process on racism and like homophobia and prejudice. It's very much about the subtleties of that and not like the overtness and the realization that if someone's obnoxiously anything, there's an atheist who starts going on an atheist rant and it was like, buddy, do you want to die right now?
Well, yeah, I think that character was kind of the movie's only real misstep for me, but we'll put a pin in that. Because I just want to say, I think the movie's more about the insidious nature of the way we otherize people and our prejudices. Like the insidious nature of prejudice, I think, is kind of what this is about. Because as the movie progresses, like no character is 100% good or 100% a piece of shit, except maybe for the last person.
Yeah. And I would say the little girl, obviously, that's the other element in this that we haven't talked about.
Yeah.
One of them is a like 10-year-old girl.
10-year-old girl.
And another really smart thing this movie did that I liked that they really have to walk this line. But once they realize there's a 10-year-old girl, everybody kind of collectively is like, okay, so she's gonna. It's a 10-year-old girl and a pregnant lady, and they all kind of accept the fact that one of those two will be the last, because they're like, well, shit, like, what are we gonna do? Kill one of these? At least that's how it starts. Obviously, things happen.
Yeah.
But like, yeah, I liked that about it too.
And then it eventually gets to the point where they spend most of the movie, first of all, trying to figure out who should be sacrificed first, basically, and they decide the old people. So there's a really well done couple of rounds where people are getting killed every 2 minutes, and a lot of the characters barely even pause in the discussion they're having.
Right, it bide them some time.
Yeah,
where they're like, okay, we go around.
Yeah, we're buying some time by killing off all the old. So it's like immediately all those people stop becoming people.
Yeah, they do this thing where people like kind of flinch. And like, yeah, it's mainly like they're trying to carry on the like, okay, who did this to us? How do we escape? What can we do? And just every now and then it's just like, psh, someone's dead. And they keep going. And that was fucking ice cold.
Yeah. And I forget what comes next, but they basically start trying to figure out what's the best criteria with which to judge who deserves to live, basically.
Right.
And they go through all the things like whether or not you're a criminal, and they find out one guy beat his girlfriend, so he's gone. And then it's like they find the lady who's a lesbian, and they try arguing that, she doesn't deserve to be here because like, oh, her kids will be better off. But then like the guy who said that gets zapped. So like the homophobic guy gets zapped.
Exactly. I would say that's the main misstep of this movie. And I wouldn't call it a misstep necessarily, but every now and then someone just like starts being obnoxious, and it's like, why would you do that right now?
Yeah, that's
why would you? Yeah,
that's the pin that I want that I put in that one guy that I want to talk about.
Okay.
The guy who goes on the atheist rant, because one guy briefly speaks up and reveals that he's like a deacon or a minister or something.
Right.
Because this one lady volunteers herself. She's like, "Look, I'll step out. My son died last year in a motorcycle accident, so I'll throw myself onto this fire to buy the rest of the group some time. I'll do the noble thing." And then the minister guy says, "Oh, God sees you. You'll get to see your son again." Like, he reassures her, and then she does it. And then this other guy like rips into the minister for the next 2 minutes for believing in God. And it's like, really, I get it. Like, that made a little bit more sense than what comes next. But like, there it was kind of like, all right, he's going pretty hard against it. But also I get being angry at the idea that there is a God when we're literally in an alien spacecraft being forced to kill each other every 2 minutes. But then one round passes by and that guy survives it. And then he turns to the woman next to him and starts launching into this tirade about how he's seen her before, and then basically breaks her down and gets her to admit that she is an actress who got breast implants. And then he gets zapped and killed. And I don't understand what that's like. There's
a few, but he's the worst one.
Yeah, real quick, that was the only moment of the film where I could see the writing, where it was just like, okay, we need a reason to get rid of this character. So let's have him just go on this gross rant against this person next to him and basically get himself killed for reasons that I don't understand.
Here's what I'll say is that I actually think it would have been easy to fix if they had shown that this is an act of self-destruction, like he snapped and he's just like, fuck it. Like if that was the idea, if he knew, like, I am signing my death warrant.
Yeah.
But they don't really imply that.
No.
They imply that this is like him trying to survive. And it's like, I thought of a good sketch idea, even though sketches are dead, is I really want to do this movie or a sketch of this sequence where one of them is just like doing like a Jerry Lewis impression. Like one of them is the most obnoxious person in the world, and for some reason it never occurs to anybody to kill them.
They keep not voting for him.
Yeah, they keep just being like, well, Greg is cool. We all love Greg, right? Like,
well, obviously.
And he's just like...
It's a room full of French people, and they all just love Jerry Lewis.
Yeah, or it's someone doing like bad Borat the whole time.
Yeah, it's like cracking us up again. Way to keep our spirits alive, Greg. That Greg, he's the most important member of the group.
But yeah, it's
because he just every couple of minutes he just says, "My life." Thanks for bringing us back. Whew. Thanks for diffusing that situation, Greg.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, there's a few people like that where it's like, what are you doing, man?
Yeah, that was what was weird, because it didn't make any sense. Like, why would he do that unless he was trying to single her out? But it was, I don't know, it just wasn't done very well. So it just, like, it was, he wasn't, I don't know, it just wasn't done very well. So it just seemed like he was blowing himself up just because he knew he needed to get out of the movie.
Right. I would say there's also one more misstep.
Uh-huh.
And I don't know. This is tough because the movie goes everywhere politically. That's the idea. And one of the things that never fucking happens is, as we pointed out, it comes down to a little girl and a pregnant woman, and they're like struggling to figure out who would they kill. And no one brings up the fact that perhaps the baby isn't alive yet. You know what I mean? Like, they never bring in a abortion conversation, or because if you don't think that baby is sentient yet, then it's an easy answer. It's like, yeah, you don't kill the little kid, right? Like, that is a thing that they never bring up in the movie and never gets addressed. And you'd think one or two people would be like, well, we have to, like, I don't want to, but we go for the pregnant lady.
They kind of dance. They don't really dance around it. They circle it. Because a couple of them do say, well, like, why? It's like, so, like, one of the ladies says, well, so what? We're supposed to protect this pregnant woman because she doesn't understand how to use contraceptive. Like, so they do sort of circle the idea that the kid should still be the most important one, but they never land on that specific, like, political argument. That's for sure.
Right. Yeah. And, like, it's weird because it really feels like it would come up.
Yeah.
But
I mean, they get everything. They get pretty much every other, not everything else, but they cover a lot. There's a guy with one arm, so they're like, well, what's he going to contribute to society? That's another idea that comes up, is how much do you contribute to society, even though human beings don't exist to contribute to a government? It's the other way around.
Yeah. There's a lot. Yeah. One of my favorite death, I think, is one of the first ideas they have is, let's go around and everybody just tell us who they are. So we, like, humanize each other. And the first woman is like, hi, I'm Beth. And she's, like, really nervous and, she's scared. And she's a sweet woman. And she's like, I have a niece and nephew. I don't have kids. I do this. I do that. And she's, like, very sweet. And then next round, murdered. And it's the idea of, like, calling attention to yourself, period. Yes. And so someone says, like, after, like, well, she didn't have kids, so, and the other one's like, yeah, that's why I picked her too.
Yeah.
And it's like, they create this situation where it's like popularity. And that's what eventually happens, is someone points out, if we're all protecting this pregnant woman and this kid, none of us has a chance. So who wants to start killing these two? Right.
Then they figure out, then they invent political parties. Like, it's like,
do.
It's like showing us how
society
is created and how, like, these conflicts begin. It's just with when people's backs are to the wall, they start coming up with, the criteria constantly changes to make everybody but yourself part of the group that doesn't deserve to exist.
Right.
So yeah,
I feel like someone casually floats a race war, and they don't really do it that way. But racism comes up.
What happens is, like, they don't really draw attention to it, but you sort of start to notice, like, the first people, the first, like, 10 people that die are mostly people of color. So, like, after the Muslim woman gets killed,
for no reason.
Yeah.
No reason.
She hasn't done anything. She just gets dropped at the end of one sentence. Like, so finally one guy is like, one of the black guys is like, okay, are we just not going to say anything about the fact that they just keep killing all the brown people?
Yeah. And then they sort of, like, snuff it out, because, like...
But then it comes back.
It comes back in a beautiful way, because they beautiful is the wrong word, but cinematically beautiful, where there's, like, an army guy the whole time, and he gets targeted briefly because it's like, well, you did sign up to, risk your life.
Us, yeah.
But then once they start doing the factions, they start doing this game where they realize, like, if you kill off people from the other groups,
we have the majority. Yeah.
You have the majority because of the voting.
Yeah.
And at one point they there's a man and his wife who he basically extorts the man. He says, we're all going to target your wife unless you target this person. and the countdown is happening, and he's like, I'm gonna do it, we're gonna do it. And then finally he's like, okay, I relent. And there's like 2 seconds later, and the army guy just shouts, okay, everybody kill the black guy.
Yep.
And it's like, fuck.
Yep.
Yeah. And it's moments like that where you're like, yep, you racist son of a bitch. Like, of course.
Yep.
And it's these moments that are like really well done in this film.
Mm-hmm.
It's, oh, good God.
Yeah. Yeah, this is going to be hard to talk about.
Well, yeah, because it's just people talking in a fucking room.
And the theme is so clear so early on. And is generally pretty well executed upon, so it just keeps developing that theme, and it's not like a complicated one. So
right, but I guess that's the strength of this movie, is that once you think, okay, I see, it throws in a new element that is like,
that's true.
Yeah, because so it starts with like, okay, the olds, and then it starts with like morality and like criminals. And then they like pick off the overt racists or the overt homophobic people. And then they pick off just kind of the loudmouths, I would say. Like the atheist guy, I mean, you could say he was killed because he's an atheist, but it really does seem like he was killed because he was an asshole.
He's an asshole, yeah.
And then there's like one of the guys who I couldn't believe lasted as long as like Mr. Wall Street, who's like suspenders, suit, slick back hair.
He's the biggest fucking like, prick too. It's like, man, how did he last this long?
Right. I think the idea is like that he seems like he's helpful, but he really isn't. Then they start going with the people who like the people who can't speak English. There's a man who can't speak English. They at one point they start asking the little girl about her grades.
Yeah.
They ask the woman like, do you know who the father is?
Do you have a job? Do you know who the father is? Is he in prison? Like it starts getting real gross. And
right. It really is the idea of like a bunch of people trying to decide like who is the best among us. And what's really cool about this is that by going in that process, by creating like morality, they're able to slowly become racist. They're able to slowly create white supremacy within this group. They are able to slowly because as they start singling people out for being immoral or petty things or just killing a Middle Eastern lady, it becomes society where it's like, oh yeah, there's this same power struggle until spoilers, it's one white guy. Like that's the thing is, so they do it really well as showing like again, this had way more. This was way better than it needed to be. So like,
it's about. Yeah, it's like I said, it's the insidious nature of prejudice. So it's like another thing that we hadn't really talked about yet is how each character progresses alongside how the movie is progressing. So like as the movie sort of moves from, broader things like, well, the older people should go first because they're like old. And then it gets down to like this granular moralizing that is just completely subjective. The people start becoming more depraved and less of who you thought they were. Like at first there's some characters who seem pretty cool, and then they kind of, as the situation gets more intense, they turn into pieces of shit. And then there's a little bit of the other direction where there's some people who kind of seem like scumbags or who you're not quite sure about. As the movie progresses, they start to become more like, oh, okay, you're not really that bad.
Right. It's the idea. Yeah, it's the idea that if you take a group of people and you bring in like all the rules of society, because that's what they're all bringing in. Their prejudices, what
it's
society
a microcosm
considers,
of society, 100%.
Yeah. And so what they're saying is that when you put that all in there, the people who end up on top are the shitty people, aren't good people.
No.
And that's kind of that's a great statement to make. We haven't talked about one of my favorite characters is this like big dude who I kept noticing.
Oh, the guy who doesn't say shit?
Yeah, the guy was like, I wonder when that's going to come up. He doesn't say a single word, nor does he vote.
He doesn't vote.
He remains neutral.
I thought he was going to be an alien.
Me too. That's what they're setting up. I thought, oh, that guy's up to something. But what they're really revealing is like, well, so the guy himself, he's not insidious. He just doesn't want to play their game. And
He's
I thought what they were revealing, what they were revealing is that like that's the way to win. Like if you just no one does anything. But they sort of already established that it seemed like because they do all the things where they
try. If they don't vote, they'd pick somebody at random.
If they all tie,
it'd pick somebody at random. Yeah.
Yeah. And if two people tie, then they both there's like a showdown.
Yeah. There's a sudden death showdown, and if the tie isn't broken, it kills them both.
Exactly. So, like, just for people who are wondering, they do all the things, you know, where it's like, why didn't you do this? Why didn't you do this? They do it all. And so it seems like, it established that not voting, but basically he kind of leverages the situation to keep himself morally clean and stay neutral, which you could argue isn't neutral. Isn't morally clean, but it keeps him alive longer than everybody else until it doesn't.
Yeah.
And like, there's a really good message there about neutrality. Yeah. About the idea that like, yes, you can stay neutral to a point. And then at the end, but he's not an insidious character. He seems more like
I refuse to do this. Yeah.
Yeah. He's just like, fuck this. And so at the end, they just turn to him and they're like, we're sorry. Like, you're next. And he just doesn't say anything. And they're like, okay. And they accept it. There's a lot of...
Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to go. We briefly mentioned that people volunteer.
Yes.
There's a whole bit of that of like, thank you for your service.
Yeah.
Kind of stuff.
That's what I was going to bring up when this 16-year-old kid is one of the people who volunteers because he's like, I don't want to kill anyone. They're all like, they talk him up. Like, no, he should be able to sacrifice himself if he wants to, even though it's obviously fucked up that you're letting a teenager do this.
Yep. It's another society thing.
Yeah, exactly. 100%.
We're sending a teenager to death and we're praising him while doing it.
Thank you for your service. And he tells them his name. He's like, my name is Sean. They're like, I'm going to name my kids after you, Sean. And right before he steps out of the circle to get zapped, like a couple of them say, God bless you, Scott. Like they call him the wrong name. Right before he dies.
It's perfect.
So your sacrifice is meaningless because these people don't care about you.
No, they're just glad it's not them.
Glad it's not them. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's going through all of those fucking stages.
Yeah.
Until it's down to this one guy who seems very compassionate, and he seems to be the person he's been like, he's not the person who was leading the we need to protect these two, but he was part of it.
Yeah. And
so he sort of is just like, it's the pregnant woman, the little girl, and him. And he's like, okay, so I'm going to be next. But you two have to choose who's going to be last. And like, we can talk it out now. You guys can do it on your own kind of thing. And the little girl volunteers. And again, if I was that pregnant lady, I don't know. It's who knows what anybody does in this situation, but they like allow it to be the little girl. And the girl says, I'll go next. And the guy says, you're being very brave. I will, he basically is just like, you're being very brave. Let's go together. Because we didn't mention, if you leave your little space, you also die.
Yeah.
Like you can voluntarily kill yourself.
Yeah.
And so he's like, okay, 1, 2, 3. And he goes to step out and he lets the little girl step out.
He sure does, Dave.
And he doesn't step out while simultaneously voting for the pregnant woman, killing them both. And I burst into laughter because I was like, what a beautiful scumbag.
Yeah.
What a tremendous,
glorious scumbag.
Yeah. King asshole here.
Yeah.
And so it's just him. And it's like, oh, you motherfucker.
Yep.
And it's to show that idea of like, yeah, you have to be manipulative. He was a sociopath, essentially. He was a manipulative sociopath the whole time, and you didn't realize it. And then the aliens decide to make a firm pro-life message by having it come down to actually the baby inside the woman and him, which he still wins.
Right, because the baby can't vote.
Babies can't vote.
So he zaps that baby.
Zaps that baby.
Listeners, he zaps that baby.
He sure does. So this man, to do anything to survive, kills this pregnant woman, her baby, and a little girl by manipulating her. And then this was, I think, a really good part of the film, even though the effects were bad. They basically just show him get dropped off.
Mm-hmm.
And there's all these ships, and they presumably are leaving. And it's just him and a bunch of other people who all look dazed. And you realize, like, oh, it's now a planet filled with people with massive survivor's guilt.
Yeah.
Who are all fucked up. And
yeah.
And
who knows what they did? They may all be sociopaths like him. We see another pregnant lady with him. It's who knows what they had to do in order to get through those games.
Right, and that's what's great is by showing the most insidious version, you have that realization.
Yeah,
and it's like the worst prank an alien could play. Like they're like, hey, I got a good idea. Let's Maze Runner them, and then let's mind fuck them. Let's make a whole planet filled with people who are out of their minds.
Yeah.
Because that's what it is
Quite
that
possibly
at the end, it's like,
a planet full of the worst people alive.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They're just like make their society the worst.
Yep.
The president comes on, whoever that is at the now, is just like, my fellow Americans, what the fuck was that? What do we do? Do we all walk into the ocean? Like, goddamn.
Yeah.
And it's a good moment because unlike a lot of these movies, I assumed it was never going to show the outside. It was going to cube us.
Yeah.
But it didn't. And it also pointed out, like, yeah, and now they're all really fucked up. And I don't know. There's something about that I really appreciated too. Like, that's well done.
Yeah, it didn't, because the entire point of the film didn't quite become clear until then, because then it's sort of like, I mean, I guess it was always clear, but that really drives it home, where it seems like the larger point is like, this is how society is made, so if this is how you come out on top, this is what all of the people on top basically are. It's like saying, this is what rises to the top in the way that society currently exists.
Right. And so, like, that is a surprisingly complex observation that I didn't think they were going to try to make.
Nope.
And so that's kind of where this movie becomes a hidden gem. That said, it's still like, I like, for example, they have to, like, in the first, like, 3 minutes, they figure out everything where they're like, okay, we have to, like, there's a lot of, like, sweaty exposition of, like, not even,
they get it out of the way pretty quick, but I see what you're saying, is they figure out that it's a voting system, that they can only see their own votes, and that they manipulate the votes by moving their hands and make their final selection by closing their hands. They figure all of that stuff out pretty quick.
Yeah, too quick, I would say.
Yeah, but
and it's kind of the price you pay for making a movie like this.
Yeah, because I don't want to see them. I don't want to see them dedicate 30 minutes of the movie to figuring that out, because that's not what the point of the movie is. So I'll forgive a thing like that in this situation for sure.
Yeah, it's kind of going back to the start of this, which is that this movie is better than it should be. But maybe I'm prejudiced against these movies, but to me, movies like Cube or movies like this are some of the easiest movies to make.
Yeah,
meaning that, like, you're making up a scenario, a puzzle for people, and then you get to say what you want to say because you're kind of just controlling the people. You know what I mean? Where it's like, it's a writer kind of ranting about society using a group of straw men to do that.
Yeah, for sure.
In a very enclosed and simple scenario that they've made up.
That's every movie.
So, yes, it is. You're right. It is, but these are the fastest ways to see them. It's kind of why I was frustrated with, like, Crawl and Don't Breathe, because it's the same thing in my mind, which is like, oh, you're fighting the screenwriter. The screenwriter has put these characters in a contraption and then is, like, giving them the obstacles, and you can really feel it more with these films. What's a compliment about this film is that that's not nearly as much of a problem as I anticipated.
No, I see what you're saying, though, because for sure. And obviously, I'm not saying that this person's view of the world or society is necessarily correct or that I agree with it, but their point is made very, very well, and in an interesting way, I think. And I do think there's a lot of truth to the insidious nature of prejudice. Oftentimes being the more dangerous version. I mean, I don't think too many people would because that's a lot of like systemic issues that we talk about are a lot a lot of the times will be insidious rather than overt.
Right. It's what you said when you talked about the atheist guy, where you could see the screenwriting. Is that, like, I think if this movie was put in a different writer's hands, it could have been disastrous.
Oh yeah.
And like that's what it is that the writer was able to, like, it's like it just conveniently lined up with, yeah, that's how I do believe this stuff plays out. You know what I mean? Like, for example, it was very smart for the overt assholes, the racists, the people who are prejudiced, to die, but for there to be the subtle prejudice and racism. That's a great idea. You know, like, and there's a writer could have easily made them all like overtly racist. You know what I mean? A writer could have easily made it like really sweaty or really in your face, and they didn't. And like that is smart, you know? Yeah,
I agree with that.
Yeah, like another writer could have had them kill the gay character immediately. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And they didn't, and that I thought was important. I thought that was really well done.
Or they could have made it like a really cringy, like, white savior movie.
Right. There's a lot of things that could have gone wrong.
Yeah.
When you're making, and so it kind of takes someone who is like mature enough to look at how they what they want to say about society as a whole, because that's essentially what you're saying.
Yeah.
And so, like, that can come off really preachy, that can come off really cringy, that could come off just plain wrong. You know?
And I actually, that makes me kind of want to amend what I said a minute ago about not necessarily this movie being about this is what rises to the top in society. So this is kind of like, I think it might be more about this is how these systemic issues and these insidious things survive, I guess.
Yeah.
Is by manipulation and obfuscation and kind of hiding and staying insidious and pitting people against each other for different reasons, like pitting the people against each other for how much money they make, when really you have more power than both of them. Like that's where the power imbalance lies, between you and them, rather than those two. So that's more what it's about. It's about how these systems perpetuate themselves.
Exactly. That's what's really smart about it, is it's not about how people are animals.
Yeah.
It's not about how, we turn out what happens. So going back to that idea of that, how they're eliminating people is by eliminating the criminals, by eliminating minorities, by people who can't speak English, who, like, the one person wasn't in the country legally. Those aren't immoral people. You're eliminating people who might have a different voice, who might have a different viewpoint or more compassion. And so it's creating it keeps compounding. By eliminating the people that are deemed unworthy, you're eliminating the people who can restore sanity to the moment.
And it starts out from a place that seems harsh but reasonable. Right. Like, they start out by saying, listen, it's got to be all the people who are like 70 and 80. They've got to be the ones we vote for first. And everybody's like, it's hard, but that's the way we got to go. But as soon as you start going down that road, as soon as you start determining the value of a person's life, it doesn't end.
Right. And also, when you start by killing old people, guess what you're killing off is decades of experience
and wisdom.
Yeah. And that's what it is that they never go by, because they never go by who's the most qualified to figure this out. Like they don't go by experience at all, or like your life, like where are you coming from? It never even occurs to them. It's just on, like, what is your superficial value in society? And that fucks them. It creates a situation where a sociopath can live. Yeah. And so, like, it's a very interesting film for that reason, that it actually explores that stuff. Because, did not think it would.
No, I was expecting an extremely bad VOD Cube ripoff, like the innumerable VOD or straight to DVD Saw ripoffs that came out in the aughts and are still coming out.
Yeah, I expected this to be a real snooze fest too, and it is very. They cast great people. A lot of them are over the top, but that's kind of what you need for this.
Yeah, I didn't
you mentioned that people change. I like that long hair, the guy with the blonde hair, who seems like a cool guy too.
Oh, the guy who literally looks like Jesus?
Yeah, Jesus.
Yeah.
Yeah, he has a good turn.
Mm-hmm. Because he starts out sounding reasonable, and then it's like, oh, you're just dividing people into camps.
Right. It's also, there's an element there about leadership, about how we get a fascist, like,
yeah.
And I don't even know if the movie knows it's saying all those things. It just kind of coincidentally does.
It escalates so perfectly, though, that I think it must be intentional.
Yeah, probably.
Because we arrive at political parties once we run out of quote unquote obvious people who can be otherized.
Right.
And that's when they start splitting off into like along ideologies rather than like criteria that they can easily identify.
Right. My only other critique is maybe I'm optimistic, but I do feel like more people would have sacrificed themselves.
I think so.
I know. Yeah. Like that's
I think
the
more.
one thing
I think
is
more
like,
people would have abstained from voting. Like,
yep.
I think more people. I think it would have been closer to. Honestly, I think it might have been. I would like to think it would have been closer to the Dark Knight, where they're all just like, "Fuck it, I'm not blowing up a shit full of people."
Right.
I don't care what you do to me. I'm not murdering 100 people.
I think it's the element, and this is the tightrope that they had to walk, of bringing in a little kid, where that was the part where it's like, I don't know if people would ever say, yes, let's kill the child. I think it would be like, okay, we're all dead. Let's use our time to figure out how to escape. And if we don't, guess who's living?
Well,
like,
yeah, I would like to think that, but I understand that that's subjective. And I think,
I also understand that you don't have a movie.
Yeah,
if that is what
really,
it is.
You don't really get much movie out of that. But one of the guys says, if you remember, he's the older guy that he and the woman, like a few people know each other, and he knows this other woman, and they were having an affair.
Right.
But he says kind of early on when they identified that what is going to be the more ultimate moral conundrum for them is that the fact that there's a child and a pregnant woman in the room. One, I think it's the sociopath that's like, if it comes down to just me or them, I'm gonna, kill myself off. Who else is gonna do that? It's like, what about you? Would you do that? And he points to this older guy, and that guy's like, I have no idea what I'm gonna do. Like, I cannot tell you when my back is against the wall and I am looking oblivion in the face. I cannot tell you what I'm gonna do.
Yeah, that's the more honest answer.
Yeah,
which is like, we don't know what we'll do to survive.
I have no idea
and
what's going to happen. Yeah.
Yeah, I totally get that. Yeah. That's the thing. For me, though, like, it's either that would be the realistic way, or the other way in my mind would be that they all die within minutes because everybody scrambles.
Yeah, everybody would run.
Everybody would go, oh, fuck, and like try to leave and not know what's happening and just see people dropping, and it would just be everybody's dead.
Yeah, panic is a thing.
Yeah, that's the one other thing that I think, again, you don't have a movie. You have to ignore that idea. You could have gotten around it by making them like being held in place at first or something, I guess. Mm-hmm. But yeah, that's the other thing where it's like they kind of have to like, fake it a little bit. They do have like one person at first try to leave and they die.
Yeah, I think there's more than one, but yeah, there's definitely they do establish that if you try to leave your circle, you will die.
Yeah, and they learn that. But yeah, in my mind, it's like they all wake up at once. I feel like everybody would go, oh, fuck.
Yeah.
And die immediately. But yeah, I hope we kind of spoiled this movie for people, but it is a movie that like I never would have watched. I knew it was there. Nope. It's the Netflix equivalent of I kept seeing the cover at the video store. It's like it was always there. Yeah. I always saw it skipping through Netflix, and I'm glad I watched it because it is better than it needed to be. Ultimately, it's not really my favorite movie. It's kind of, I still think it's like, it's just limited because of what it is. Like, it's naturally limited.
Yeah. No, it's not like a perfect or amazing film, but it is good. And I think it's worth watching. It's way better than I expected. It held my attention the entire time. I thought it had interesting things to say, and I thought it was executed mostly pretty well. Yeah. It is a little diamond in the rough sitch.
It really is.
Yeah.
Because I guarantee other people also felt the same way.
Yes.
Where they saw this on Netflix and they were like, no reason.
You would have no reason to stop and give this a second look.
Yeah. So yeah, I don't think they meant it, but Burrito Mouth really did us a favor with their shape themes. Do you have any other thoughts on this?
No,
neither do I. Other than thank you, Burrito Mouth.
Yeah, man. Thanks
for your shape obsession. This was through our Patreon. We have a Patreon, It's called patreon.com/gamefullyunemployed. And if you go on there, there are tiers where you can have like custom podcasts made, but also for just $5 a month, you get access to a bunch of exclusive podcasts like Tom and Jeff Watch Batman, Spiel Boys, Fox Mulder's a Maniac, Star Trek The Next Futurama. For $10 a month, we watch movies with our patrons every Friday night. There's a bunch of other things. There's a tier where you get a shout out at Hypecast and a mug, a Sheev mug. So just go on there, play around.
Goof off, slap your peepers on some stuff. Maybe vote for some people to get zapped with alien energy.
Right,
We also have a store. Head over to gamefullyunemployed.com. You can find a link to our Teespring store where we have all kinds of original artwork and designs you can get on t-shirts and mugs and stickers and posters, all kinds of stuff. So check that out while you're at it.
Yeah, Tom, should we do a circle?
Probably.
We could do a circle.
We could add that tier.
A low-budget circle where it's just someone dressed as a clown with a gun in the center.
Yeah.
Who doesn't speak and just... And it's like how would the voting work? It's just everybody like points.
Yeah, or they blink. Okay. I don't know. We'll find it. They honk a little horn because that's the language that clowns speak.
That's true.
They speak horn.
They do speak horn and fear.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, fluent in both.